How's it going, everyone? My name is Amos, and if you can't tell by the name of this channel, I really like and appreciate dividend-paying stocks. So imagine a stock that pays you more money every single year just because you own it. And the catch is, they've been doing it for at least 50 years. Friends and family, these stocks are known as dividend kings. So when you think about through the ups and the downs, market recessions and economic downturns, they have increased their dividends despite it all because of the resilience of their business model and the quality of their operations. You can't necessarily increase the dividend unless you're kicking butt for the most part. So in today's video, we're going to be ranking dividend kings from A to F. As you can see on your screen right now, we'll elevate one to the S status at the very end. And in terms of the metrics that we're going to be applying to these dividend kings, number one is going to be the dividend profile, because I think it's going to be a really nice proxy for their overall financial health. Because as I just alluded to in the intro, the growth rate of their dividend can't really happen unless their earnings per share is growing as well. And for the net income, the bottom line and the profits to be increasing, their revenue also needs to be following suit so that it can trickle down and their leftover profits can increase year over year, unless their revenue is stagnant or is declining, but they're improving their margins. All that to say, because these are very mature companies that we're going to be looking at today, we're not going to exactly see the most exciting numbers on their income statement. They're very mature, established, and some of their company histories, they've been around for like 200 years. And then number two, the second metric is going to be the cheese factor. Absolutely subjective. It's the Amos effect. We're going to be thinking about the strength of their business model going into the future. And to do that, we'll be looking at a few line items on their financial statements. And then number two, I guess I'll take into account their economic moat, whether or not they have one, especially going forward. And then of course, this is where you might hate me, but in my own personal opinion, whether or not I feel bullish or bearish about said company. So to kick things off, we have number one, Walmart, ticker symbol WMT, and they've been increasing their dividend payout for the past 52 years. And as depicted by their year-to-date stock price pattern, they're up by 11.2%. Now, Walmart's in the business of retail. They sell almost everything and anything in their stores. And their supply chain, I would argue, is best in class. They would give Amazon a run for their money. And Amazon actually copied the business model and the logistics of Walmart. And that's why their e-commerce is so freaking strong. But anyways, as we jump on over to their dividend profile, right now their dividend yield, nothing to write home about. Less than 1%. Okay, I hear you. However, it's absolutely healthy and it's sustainable. And the dividend growth rate, this is where they get a lot of brownie points. They're increasing this number right here, the annual dividend payout of 94 cents. The dividend yield is 0.94%. All right, something's funny money right here. This is a little funky. But anyways, this is growing by 13% year over year. And as you can see right there, the number of years they've been increasing their dividend is 52 years. Absolutely impressive. And as I scroll down to show you their dividend payout depicted visually, I mean, this is just phenomenal. Fantastic. For the past 2 years, I think they've been a little aggressive on the hiking of their dividends, but once again, they can absolutely afford to do so, especially when your payout ratio is less than freaking 35%. Like, come on. A healthy dividend company should be around, what, 70, 75%? If we're talking about a very mature business, then I guess we can bump it up to 80%. Anything above 80%, and then it starts getting into that yellow flag territory, anything above 90%, you better pump the brakes. All right, we're going to turn this card right around. And remember how I said in the beginning, you can't really grow your dividend unless your bottom line and your profits are growing. You want to see it depicted? So right now we're on their income statement. They generated $693 billion of revenue in the past 12 months. I'm giggling because that's like a bonkers amount of money to be generated. However, their margins are razor thin. And that's why they're able to give practically the lowest prices across the board for almost all and any of their products. And that's why a lot of their customers are super loyal and they always go back to a Walmart. But as we scroll down and take a look at their earnings per share, it's $2.65. If you look at it visually depicted, I mean, since 2019, it's been on an uproar, right? $2.65. It's an increase of 38% year over year. And then the year prior, it went up by 26% year over year. So usually, as a general rule of nipple, the dividend growth rate is usually about half of the earnings per share growth rate, or equivalent to the growth of their earnings per share. And it looks like for Walmart, 38% growth in their profits per share outstanding, and their dividend growth rate is 13%. They could absolutely afford to hike it up by even 18 or even 19%. And when I think about their business model going forward, friends and family, this is Walmart. It's not some speculative growth company that's only driven by their narrative or story. They have the numbers, data, and fundamentals to back up their business operations. I feel pretty darn bullish about them going forward, especially now that they're tapping in to their potential of the advertising line of the business. They're copying Amazon, which I think is hilarious because Amazon copied them with the supply chain and logistics, but now Walmart's copying Amazon through getting cash bags with advertisements being placed in their stores, but also on their website. So when I think about Walmart, I like it. I think they're going to be here today and here tomorrow. And I think their economic moat is pretty strong. I don't think there's any other retailer out there that will come close to doing what they do on the scale that they do, with the footprint that they do as well. I think the last I heard, it's like 92 or 93% of all Americans live within 15 minutes of a Walmart. Like, that's absolutely crazy. And then the other like 8% of the Americans that don't, they usually are serviced by Dollar General. So I think that's a pretty cool business opportunity that Dollar General is taking advantage of. So I think to kick things off, I think with Walmart, I think they're really a solid B+. I really like the dividend growth rate. The dividend yield could be a little better, right? But it's because their share price appreciation has been outpacing the growth of their dividend. What I mean by that is if we jump on back over to their stock price chart and we look at the past 5 years, dude, they're up by 111%. The share price has just been soaring. Yes, this dinosaur ancient retail chain of a company is just crushing it. So I think to make things right, I would argue Walmart is probably an A-. We might have to circle back and revisit their grade because I might bump them down to a B. But as of right now, I think they're a solid A-. Now, moving on to the next company, we're going to be talking about S&P Global, ticker symbol SPGI, and they make money by providing financial information, credit ratings, and they make money from operating the S&P 500 and all of the other associated ETFs. They give them a royalty fee check saying, hey, here's our ETF of your index fund. And what's crazy about S&P Global, I never bought into this, but there's so much hype and narrative of them being this awesome asset-light growth company. But check this out, friends and family. If we zoom out for the past 5 years, in comparison to Walmart, 111%, S&P Global is 55%, only taking into account the share price appreciation. For as much attention and growth that is thrown around whenever you mention the word S&P Global, I feel like that pales in comparison to a retail chain. I mean, wouldn't you agree? I mean, when you break that down, that's roughly 11% year over year, which is respectable, but I think Walmart deserves more respect because they're outpacing and they're beating out this quote-unquote growth company. But S&P Global, if we jump on over to their dividend profile, their dividend yield, just like Walmart, right? It's a 0.71%. It's not even a 1%. For me, I feel like the decent dividend yield has to at least be 3%, and then we're talking. However, I think if you're in your portfolio building and wealth accumulation phase of your life, I think it makes sense. You want the share price to be exploding and then the dividend yield to slowly catch up. Because unless you're in your retirement phase, you don't necessarily need that juicy dividend payment right now. You want one or the other. If you can get both, such as through like BDCs or REITs, even better. But for the most part, you gotta pick one or the other. You either need growth in the share price that's super high, or their dividend yield needs to be really juicy, sustainable, and the growth rate of that dividend needs to be good. However, with S&P Global, I guess the share price appreciation is pretty good, and it's really sustainable. What do I mean by it's sustainable, Amos? So when we think about the dividend payout ratio, and it's 29%, that means when we jump on over to their income statement, and we scroll on down to their profits per share, it's $13. correct? Now, as we jump on back over to their dividend profile, of that $13, $3.84 of it will be utilized to fund and pay out the dividends to the shareholders, which means 29% of their profits are used for the dividends, meaning there's roughly 71% of their profits left over for them to reinvest back into the business, to do share buybacks, to increase their operations, to increase the salaries for their employees, and X, Y, Z. The lower the payout ratio, the better it is as a general rule of nipple. Their growth rate, though, for a company that has so much hype to be 4.4%, can you see why I'm low-key kind of a hater of the whole S&P Global getting all this attention? Walmart, on the other hand, was a 13% growth rate. Now, mind you, I'm being a little extra. I'm being exaggerative because I think a decent dividend growth rate, which is of this number right here, should be at least 3%, just like the dividend yield, because the historical rate of inflation fluctuates between 2.5 to about 3.25%. So if the dividend growth rate matches that, then your pricing power and your purchasing power of that dividend income, it keeps up with the rate of inflation. Does that make sense? So the fact that it's 4% is good, but it doesn't really keep in line with the narrative of S&P Global being this awesome growth company. I mean, for the past 1 year, 4.8%, past 5 years, 55.8%. And that's why I said on this channel, there's receipts. Two years ago, I said that NASDAQ is the much better alternative to SPGI. Because if we jump on over and look at NASDAQ, past 1 year, we're talking about 27% rate of return for the share price appreciation. 5 years, we're talking about 115%, almost the same as Walmart, much better alternative, and I still think they're the much better alternative to the S&P Global because they also do financial information and they operate the NASDAQ 100, very similar business model to S&P Global, but I think NASDAQ is higher quality across the board for everything. The management, the way that they utilize their capital, their margins, and their future. So going back over to S&P Global, I just feel like they're overhyped. I just don't buy into their growth story. I think they're going to be a slow and steady winner in terms of getting like an 8 or 10% ROI per year going forward. But in comparison to NASDAQ, it pales in comparison. So if you have one that's a lot better, then why go with the one that's a little more dull? Does that make sense? Of course, you can label me as a hater, but it's just the way that I'm thinking. Absolutely subjective, but my thinking is that the whole credit system is going to have a radical shift, at least in the next 5 to 10 years. So S&P Global, I feel bearish about them going forward, but they have decent numbers, correct? So ultimately, I still think they're in the B tier. Now, between Walmart and S&P Global, Walmart every single day of the week. Just my thoughts and opinions. As you can see right there, let me know how you feel. Now, the next company is a water and wastewater utility that was featured in my water industry breakdown video, and that is going to be the Middlesex Water Company. They've been increasing their dividend payments for the past 52 years, and I hear you. I know. I look older than I actually am. However, they've been paying that dividend for longer than I've been alive. Okay, that was me trying to be funny. Maybe it wasn't funny. But if we jump on over to their dividend profile, a 2.5% dividend yield, payout ratio 56%, and the growth rate slightly above the rate of inflation, I think everything checks out. I think this is ultimately what kind of looks like an average company to me. Like there's nothing bad about them and there's nothing spectacular about them as well. And when I think about the future of the water utility sector, I feel like it's one of the more resilient business models going forward. Because it doesn't matter how much AI disrupts every sector and space, we're still gonna have to shower. We're still gonna have to utilize water to wash our hands after we drop a protein bar, right? I think water is such an essential resource that bill and that utility and the modality of how it's delivered to the clients and the consumers and to our residential homes, I don't think much can change with the implementation of AI. I don't think AI can affect this industry as much as others. So even though their dividend profile was kind of average across the board, I feel really strongly about their future. I feel like the water stocks, one of the few places that you could put your money into and guarantee that in 100 years from now, even when you're long gone and dead, that your money invested into them will still be compounding throughout the ages. I feel pretty strongly about that. So taking that into account, I would argue that Middlesex Water Company is probably a C plus or a B minus. I think if S&P Global is going to be in the B tier, I think that Middlesex is probably going to be right there alongside with them. And the next one, friends and family, is going to be Archer Daniels Midland Company, ticker symbol ADM, and they make money by processing American crops like corn and soybean into ingredients like high fructose corn syrup and other ingredients that are found in our food ecosystem. They're actually very important of a company. And if we jump on over to their overview page, year to date, up by 24.8%. They went on a massive sell-off at the beginning of the year because I think they were going through an accounting fraud scandal or something like that. But I'm assuming that they made a rebound and a bounce back because they were cleared of their charges. Past 5 years, 35%. Share price appreciation, not the prettiest, but dividend profile is what matters. Dividend yield is 3.2%. Payout ratio is, that's a little high. That's a little past my comfort level. However, the growth rate, 4%, that means the leadership feels confident in that this payment of $2.04 is going to be sustainable. So, all right, they've been growing their dividend for the past 52 years. I want to jump on over and take a look at their, their top line has just been eroding since 2022 when they reached a high of about $101 billion, and since then it's just been eroding. Not a pretty picture right there, but let's look at their earnings per share. Yikers, it's been decreasing by 16% year over year, 42%. Oh my gosh, and then negative 54%. Okay, so when I think about Archer Daniels Midland, I think their dividend looked okay. Actually, it was pretty decent. The payout ratio was a little high, but I'm not liking what I saw off of first glance on their financial statement, the income statement. It looks pretty rough. So having said that, a company that's bouncing back from a scandal, do they have a bright future? I don't think they're necessarily going to disappear because I feel like we're still going to utilize the food ingredients that they process for our various food needs, but their financials looks pretty rough. I can't sugarcoat it. So consequently, this might be unpopular, but I think ADM is going to be in the D tier. I think they're slightly below average because I think their financials and their stock market performance, at least for the past 5 years, it's not a pretty picture. So if we jump on over to the next company, I'm trying to jump on over before you guys burn me alive saying, how dare you treat ADM like that? We're going to be talking about a dividend favorite known as PepsiCo, ticker symbol PEP. And they've been increasing their dividend payment for the past 53 years. And it's probably one of the more high quality food CPGs out there. They do snacks, soda, and energy drinks. And there's a rising challenge and people screaming that they want PepsiCo to break up their various lines of business. Which means as a PepsiCo shareholder, how this usually pans out is you would get a Frito-Lay's stock for every PepsiCo stock that you own. So you'll get a 1-for-1, one for Frito-Lay's and one for PepsiCo. At least that's what happened when I used to be a shareholder of AT&T. When they broke up their lines of business, I kept my T shares, which is their main line of business of communications, cell phone and internet. But I also got one share of the Warner Bros. Discovery, WBD, for every T share that I owned. So if PepsiCo does break up, more the merrier. I welcome it. But between you and me, I feel more bullish about their drinks side of the house than I do with their snacking and chips segment of the house, because it's been struggling. Anyways, if we jump on over to their dividend profile, there we go, friends and family. Dare I even say it might be a juicy dividend yield at a 3.9%. Yes, I'm rounding out. And when we think about their dividend growth rate at 6%, it looks pretty good. I hear you. The payout ratio makes it look like this is a trap, that it's ugly. However, when it comes to PepsiCo, you don't actually utilize their earnings per share. Instead, you got to use their core EPS, and I think it's like $7.77, which means their payout ratio hovers around like 70 or 75%, meaning of that $7.77, $5.69 will be utilized for the dividends. Actually, upon further review, their core EPS is closer to $8.16. So their dividend is safe and it's growing at a pretty good pace. If we look at it visually depicted, I mean, this is just beautiful, right? Consistently, reliably, and it's stable. It just keeps growing. Even despite the pandemic sell-off when everyone else was cutting their dividends, what did PepsiCo do? they raised their dividend. And when I think about their business model going forward, I feel pretty bullish about them. I think I gave it away in the introduction. I think they're pretty darn high quality. And so when I think about where they would fall along the competition, I think PepsiCo would be like a B plus, maybe even like a solid B. So I think they're going to stay right here, right next to S&P Global and Middlesex Water Company. Now, the next company that we're going to be talking about is Lowe's, and they've been increasing their dividend payout for the past 53 years, ticker symbol Lowe, and it's a retail chain for home improvement and construction products to both DIY customers and professional contractors. If you are a homeowner, you please speak to this. There is always some kind of project or repair that needs to be done on a quarterly basis or every 90 days. This goes out, or now that's broken, now you got to go over to a home improvement store to buy the parts to get it done. Unless you just hit up a contractor to do all the work. Which means regardless of who's buying the supplies at Lowe's, they are going to make steady money and income. So I think their business model, pretty resilient. And if we jump on over to their dividend profile, a 1.7% dividend yield, we'll round up, we'll give it to them a 1.8%. Payout ratio, pretty good. Dividend growth rate, pretty good once again. Are we seeing a common theme here? I think the dividend kings are kings for a pretty good reason. I think most of them are able to sustain their high dividend payments, but they're also growing it better than the rate of inflation, which it's hard for me to put any of them into the F tier unless we see someone that's pretty outrageous, someone that's just disgusting. But when I think about Lowe's, I would argue that the Tractor Supply Co. is a little better, but we're talking about Lowe's, right? I think they're pretty high quality. I like them. I think Lowe's would be in the B tier. I know this is rough. I feel like everybody belongs in the B tier except ADM. ADM possibly could be in the C tier, but their financial health, at least for the past 2.5, 3 years, looks rough. Whereas for Lowe's, ooh, friends and family, their financials look pretty rough. It looks like they reached a high of about $97 billion in 2023, but since then it's just been declining. Ooh, that is not good. Declined by 11%, negative 3%, and now it's roughly flat. What about their earnings per share? Please tell me it's improving. Okay, so at least their bottom line and their profits are improving slightly. It's also declining. So, I don't know. I think that's going to change the decision. I think Lowe's, I hate to do it because they're such a blue chip, stable household name. I think they're on the C tier. I think the financials looked a little rough, especially in the recent years. Now, the next one is going to be Kimberly-Clark, ticker symbol KMB. And I think the CEO of this company is an Asian dude. Let me just confirm. Yes, the CEO is Michael Shu. You're going to have to forgive my ignorance. I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but I'm pretty sure he's an Asian dude. Kimberly-Clark is a CPG business that makes paper-based personal care and hygiene products, such as down there for that time of the month when you get all cranky and moody and you're craving chocolates and ice cream. But they also sell Kleenex, Scott tissue paper, and Huggies, diapers, and Kotex. So if we jump on over to their dividend profile, what are we working with? A juicy dividend yield, sustainable healthy payout ratio, and the growth rate is about in line with inflation. I think everything checks out. And by the way, they've been growing their dividend for the past 53 years. Now, Kimberly-Clark is a company that I seriously looked into in the beginning of the year, around January, February. I was debating whether or not I wanted to buy into them or Procter & Gamble. Ultimately, I went with Procter & Gamble, but I still think Kimberly-Clark is high quality. I mean, the products that they're selling, it doesn't really take that much innovation for your butthole to get clean after dropping a protein bar, right? A brownie before work. So innovation and R&D, I don't really think it takes a lot to keep their business up and running, but I would argue here in Asia, and I think in parts of Europe as well, we use a bidet. You use water to clean your booty hole. So if that does adopt in North America, then bath tissue paper, which is one of their bigger business money drivers, it's going to erode. So taking that into account, I think that is a catalyst that could go in the wrong way for them. And then in terms of the feminine care products, yes, you could use a pad or a tampon, but I also think the cup, which is reusable and it's made out of like silicone rubber, if people adopt that instead of using pads and tampons, again, another line of their business is going to take a hit. So I think ultimately with Kimberly-Clark, I do like them. Don't get me wrong. I think they're going to be in the C tier. I think they're just going to be average. You're not going to get the craziest growth with them, and you're not going to get something ugly with them. You're basically buying a bond when it comes to Kimberly-Clark. Slow and steady, 3.8, maybe even like a 3.2% dividend yield, depending on their share price appreciation. Not a bad company. The next dividend king, friends and family, is going to be Becton, Dickinson and Company, ticker symbol BDX. They've been growing their dividend for the past 53 years, and they're in the business of selling wide range of medical devices, instruments, and supplies to healthcare providers, research institutions, and labs. The syringes, tools, and accessories in a hospital, usually made by Becton. And year to date, they're down by 15% or negative 15%. Past 5 years, again, negative 15%. So their performance in the stock market, kind of rough. But I also feel like that's a common theme seen with other healthcare stocks, including the pharmaceuticals and health insurance. Just everybody in the medical healthcare field taking a big hit. And as you can see, they lost most of their gains in the past 3-4 months as of May. So recent speed bump and storm that they're navigating through. Jump on over to their dividend profile. A 2% dividend yield? I feel like it could be higher, especially with their share price being eroded, but that's kind of a surprise to see. Payout ratio 76%. It's at the border of being a yellow flag, but kind of healthy as of right now. Dividend growth rate is just shy of the double-digit number of 10%, 9.5%. So what exactly is going on? Because you're not going to increase your dividend by almost 10% unless you're actually crushing it, right? So let's take a look at their numbers. Okay, the financials look pretty stellar. The top line is $21.3 billion, increase of 7.8% year over year. It's pretty stellar. What about their bottom line? Bottom line, just $5.47. Pretty much flat, not really growing, but it's stabilized. I feel like a stabilized and a predictable earnings per share is better than nothing, right? However, year over year, it did grow by 12.9% in comparison to this number right here of $4.94. So their financials checks out. I'm guessing something happened back in May or June for them to just fall off the cliff. They either had a scandal or their outlook and guidance for the rest of the year was not pretty. But when I think about hospital equipment, Becton, they should be okay, but I'm about to get really weird because I had a job offer to join them during the pandemic, but at the last stage of negotiating the compensation package and all of that jazz, the recruiter that I was working with completely ghosted me. And that kind of left a bad taste in my mouth of this company for the past 5 years. I'm like, dude, I'm salty about it still. So I feel like you should have the common courtesy to at least close the loop for potential applicants that might have joined your company. Like if you went a different direction, just do the courtesy of letting them know. But to leave them in the dark, but then again, it happened during the COVID era, which I understand that a lot of the recruiters were jumping ship and quitting left and right to join other firms and companies. So I'm guessing that the recruiter that I was working with is probably a part of that camp. So I probably just fell through the cracks and they never followed up with me. So taking personal feelings aside, I liked what I saw. I mean, there was nothing that was too crazy. I think the payout ratio was a little not high. It was okay. Slightly on the higher side. It's like when you get your waist measurement. My waist is a 28.5. Pretty small. I know, it's pretty slim. So for me, thinking about a waist size of 36 inches or 38 inches, I feel like it's a little higher, but it's still pretty healthy, right? It's not like we're talking about a 55 or a 70-inch waist like my 600-pound life on TLC. So Becton and Dickinson, this is tough. If I remove my personal feelings, they're in the B tier. If I add in how they did me dirty, they're in the F. But I feel like that's being too petty. So I'll leave them right here. I think they're in the B minus, or dare I even say C plus. But If S&P Global is going to be in the B, then BD definitely belongs up there as well. Now, the next dividend king is going to be Abbott Laboratories, ticker symbol ABT. They've been increasing their dividend payment for the past 53 years. They have a diverse range of healthcare products, including medical devices, nutritional products, and generic pharmaceuticals. They sell baby formula, Pedialyte. Dude, when you lose too much sweat because you're running a marathon or ruck marching or whatever, Pedialyte comes in clutch. And they even sell meal replacement drinks. And because they're in the pharmaceutical space and healthcare sector, I want to know if their performance is going to be similar to what we just saw with BD. Past 1 year, they're up by 16%, 27%. If you break that down by 5 years, we're talking about, let me see, 27.6 divided by 5. A 5.5% rate of return per year. If you bake in their dividends, roughly like a 6.2, 6.3% CAGR year over year. Not the worst thing in the world, but it is way below the S&P 500. Dividend yield is 1.8%. Payout ratio, super healthy. Dividend growth rate is pretty darn decent. I mean, what they do, pretty essential, and dare I even say high quality. Yes, I used to work in the pharmaceutical space. Abbott, pretty good stuff. Although the pharmaceutical line of the business, when they had that spinoff, it used to be AbbVie, but they broke off Abbott Laboratories. So AbbVie is the one that's more known with the pharmaceuticals, but the ones that Abbott still has access to, pretty high quality. And if I just take a quick glimpse at their financials, yeah, I mean, it makes sense, right? It's growing from 20 billion in 2015 to 43 billion as of right now. I think when it comes to Abbott, I mean, are you going to argue with me if I put him into the part 2? So you're going to have to stick around and watch part 2 to find out where they end up. All right, guys. So I've been toying with a new series idea, and I need your feedback on this. So I was thinking about, what if I start reviewing and roasting your portfolios on the channel? So basically, you would send me over your portfolio. I don't know how we would do it. I'll figure out the details later, like a screenshot, or you can send me like your M1 Finance or Snowball link to your holdings, and then I'll give you my honest take of every single one of the holdings, unless you have like 500 different stocks. So I guess it has to be a reasonable amount of stocks that we're working with. And then I'll point out what's strong, what's weak, and what really doesn't make sense in your portfolio, especially for your age group and your goals. And if it's bad, I'll trash it. Now, obviously, because I'm roasting your portfolios, think of it as like educational, but more importantly, fun and for entertainment purposes. I'm debating whether or not $25 per portfolio review is a fair price and if that would make sense. Because I know some people charge like $200 or $500, and I think that's kind of crazy. But for me, I'll charge a lower fee because I'll also record myself reviewing the portfolio and then upload it onto the channel. So when I think about $25, I feel like it's enough to keep things serious, to keep like the weirdos away, but it's also still affordable if you want to see your portfolio roasted, featured, and broken down on the Dividend Compounders with Cheese channel. Of course, your identity, the size of your belly button, and personal details will not be shared. Just your age and your goals. And of course, the holdings of your portfolio. Now, is this a terrible idea? Let me know. I feel like it would be fun, so please give me your feedback. Now, with that said, I love you guys. Stay safe. Good luck in the stock market, and I will talk to you next time. Peace.